everyone, welcome to week 2 of the evangelism practice. You know, all of this can be pretty overwhelming. Like, where do you even start? Maybe you're an introvert and the idea of evangelism terrifies you. Maybe this is so far out of your comfort zone and you wonder how you will ever get from where you are to leading people to Jesus. Here's what I believe. I am absolutely convinced that God wants to use you to lead someone to Christ. God can use anybody, but he wants to use you. The great tragedy is most people have never experienced this. So many people have never experienced the incredible opportunity of leading someone to Jesus. In fact, 95% of Christians have never led anyone to Christ. But hear me loud and clear, they can, and so can you. Anyone can be used by God to lead people to Christ, and that includes you. I remember when I was in the 8th grade, my best friend was Mason. We would skateboard together all the time. Mason looked like a combination of Milhouse from The Simpsons and John Lennon. He had the iconic round glasses and long hair. It was a vibe. Mason and I loved Jim Morrison and the Doors, going to the skate park and playing the odd game of RuneScape. One evening, we were walking home from a day of skateboarding, and as we got close to my house, I started asking Mason about the meaning of life and faith. You know, an average 8th grader conversation. And I started telling him about the only Bible verse that I had memorized. John 3:16. I knew very little about the Bible. I didn't have much to share. All I told him was that Jesus died for us and loves us. I was so nervous, but I didn't want to spend eternity without my friend. So I set aside my fear and told Mason. To my shock and amazement, Mason put down his skateboard and gave his life to Jesus. It was so sincere and so amazing. Listen, God can use anybody. I didn't know much about the Bible. I didn't know much in the 8th grade. I didn't have much to share, but I could tell Mason that God loved him and went to the cross to rescue him. It might not have been much, but God's power was made perfect in my weakness. Ever since that day, I've been convinced of one thing. God can use anybody, and God wants to use you. You know, we often think that the Great Commission is for the professionals. Those with the gift of evangelism are those who are in full-time ministry. We think that it's not for ordinary people like you and me. But the Great Commission isn't for those who have a theology degree or are in full-time ministry. In fact, Jesus didn't give the Great Commission to the rabbis and religious leaders. He gave it to fishermen, tax collectors, tent makers, carpenters, and doctors. He gave it to people with families and jobs and real responsibilities. He gave it to ordinary people like you and me. Jesus went out of his way to make it clear that the Great Commission is for everyone. He looked at a crowd of ordinary folks and said, "Go into all the world and make disciples." We need to understand that the word witness is a noun, not a verb. It's not something that we do. It's who we are. We are witnesses. The only question is, will we live like it? So how do we do that? How do we live our lives as witnesses? Or as Paul put it, as ambassadors of Christ? How does this become not just what we do, but who we are? See, the first step to becoming a witness for Jesus is making love the focus. Before we can ever witness for Jesus, our hearts need to be set on fire for people to come to know him. Our hearts need to be broken for people who don't know him and are lost in their sins. Unless this happens, we will never become witnesses. The German pastor Dietrich Bonhoeffer once wrote, "So few are granted the pitying eyes of Jesus, for only those who share the love of his heart have been given eyes to see, and only they can enter the harvest field." What he meant is that unless our eyes burn the love of Jesus and see people the way that he does, unless our hearts break for those who don't know him, we'll never become witnesses. Love has to be the focus. This is what Paul meant when he wrote, "If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but don't have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal." Unless love is our focus, we're just making noise. See, people can tell if we're just rattling off a gospel pitch or if we truly love them. And our love makes all the difference. Love has to be the focus. The second step to becoming a witness for Jesus is intentionality. Think about it this way. Most Christians want to share their faith. They long for people they love to come to know him. They actually want to share their faith. But at the same time, most never do. And the gap between those two realities is intentionality. Most people don't know where to start. They don't have a plan. They lack intentionality. Now, my guess is most of you go to the grocery store with a shopping list. I bet you have a to-do list at work. You may even have a set of family values or workout plan for the gym. That's because we're intentional about the things that matter. And if we're going to be witnesses, we've got to be intentional. We're going to need to make a plan. The practice for this week is to make a plan for evangelism. First, pray for opportunities. Write down the opportunities and areas of influence in your life. These can include your school, your job, or the gym you go to work out. It includes your family and your friends. Write down any opportunity in your life and pray for them. Second, pursue relationships. Write down the names of people you can be intentional with. Who do you need to schedule a coffee with or grab a beer with after work? Who can you have over for dinner or start a conversation with this week? Pursue relationships. And third, prepare. In 1 Peter 3:15, Peter says, always be prepared to give an answer to everyone for the hope that you have. We need to be prepared. Think about what you would say to that person if you had the opportunity to tell them about Jesus. What would you tell them? Take some time to write out what you would like to say. That way, you'll be prepared when the time comes. Last but not least, push yourself out of your comfort zone. Don't just sit back and wait for the right opportunity to fall out of the sky. That probably will never happen. Instead, ask yourself what action steps you need to take in order to make that plan happen. Write them down and step out of your comfort zone. All right, guys, hopefully that helps. Get out there and make a plan, and let's see our love become action.